Right now, the standoff between the US and Iran is a masterclass in contradiction. One day, we're hearing about major agreements on the horizon, and the very next, thousands of troops are on the move. So what's the real story behind this incredibly dangerous game? Let's dig in and break it down.
Okay, start with this number, 95%. That is a staggering figure, and it's how much the traffic of oil tankers through the Strait of Hormuz has plummeted. We're talking about one of the most critical energy choke points on the planet, and it's been brought to a near-total standstill. The consequences of that, well, they're global.
And to shut down like that, it doesn't just stay local. It creates a massive global energy shock. You have to remember, something like 20% of the entire world's oil supply flows through that one narrow strait. So when it gets choked off, the ripple effects hit every single one of us. You feel it at the gas pump, you feel it at the grocery store, it's everywhere.
And it's not just about crude oil. Far from it. Look at the price of liquefied natural gas, or LNG. It has absolutely skyrocketed, up 143% in Asia. And Europe is feeling the pain too, with an 85% jump. This has basically turned a regional conflict into a full-blown global inflation story.
So what in the world is actually going on? I mean, these huge economic shocks are all driven by political decisions. But the signals we're getting from the people in charge are profoundly contradictory. On one hand, you see what look like gestures of peace. On the other, you see acts of war. And that brings us to the central puzzle of this entire conflict.
Let's dive right into this first point. This is a war of contradictions, a situation where high-stakes diplomacy and military escalation are happening at the exact same time. Sounds impossible, right? Well, let's just look at the evidence.
Okay, so on one side of the coin, you have the diplomatic track. On March 23rd, the US president actually claimed there were major points of agreement with Iran. He even called off some planned military strikes. Now, that sounds like a really clear step towards de-escalation, doesn't it?
But then you get this. While Washington is talking up all this progress, Tehran comes out and publicly denies that any real talks have even happened. It's a direct, head-spinning contradiction. One side is saying, we're making progress, while the other is saying, we're not even talking. I mean, who are you supposed to believe?
And here's the kicker. While all of this talk about peace is swirling around, the Pentagon is physically sending thousands more troops to the region. And that is the absolute crucial point here. The actions on the ground are pointing directly toward escalation, even when the words are hinting at peace.
So how do we make any sense of this? Let's try to understand the core strategy at play, something analysts have started calling the fight and talk strategy.
The best way to understand this is as a form of something called coercive bargaining. Essentially, both sides are using military force not to win an outright war, but to make their position stronger at the negotiating table. Every strike, every deployment, it's a message. It's designed to force the other side to give up more when they finally do talk.
Now, in one way, you could say this calculated approach is maybe safer than just stumbling into an uncontrolled war, but it is incredibly dangerous. It turns the whole thing into a high-stakes tightrope walk. It's a contest of wills, where a single miscalculation, a single misinterpreted signal, could trigger the very war both sides claim they want to avoid.
And the place where this coercive bargaining is at its most intense, the biggest strategic pressure point for the entire globe, is the Strait of Hormuz.
The economic impact is just severe. We've already talked about the hit to the world's oil supply, but look closer here. Attacks have also knocked out a huge portion of Qatar's natural gas export capacity, and that's not a quick fix. That kind of damage could take years to repair, which means the crazy price hikes we're seeing right now in Asia and Europe, they might just be the new normal for a long, long time.
So, where does this high-stakes game actually go from here? Well, analysts using game theory have mapped out 4 possible futures for this conflict.
As you can see, the most likely outcome, at 35%, is a coercive ceasefire. That's basically the status quo. This tense, unstable mix of fighting and talking just keeps going. Close behind, though, at 30%, is a prolonged, limited war, where this just drags on without a real solution. Then you get to the really dangerous one, a major regional escalation at a terrifying 25% probability. The least likely path, at just 10%, is a sudden internal fracture, where one side just collapses from the inside.
And the path to an actual deal is getting tougher, not easier. Iran's negotiating position has hardened significantly. They're reportedly demanding compensation for war damages and refusing any limits at all on their missile program.
Both of those are almost definitely non-starters for Washington, and that makes that prolonged limited war scenario look very, very plausible.
So, as this all unfolds, how can you tell which direction we're headed? Let's give you the key indicators to watch for. Think of it as your own personal escalation watch list.
All right, on the positive side, here are the signs that things are calming down. Watch for news of a real, direct negotiating channel, not just public posturing. Look at the hard shipping data. If tanker traffic in Hormuz actually starts to pick up, that's a huge sign. And finally, a real pause in U.S. or Israeli strikes on critical infrastructure would signal a genuine attempt to lower the temperature.
And now for the red flags. If we start to see confirmed reports of sea mines being used or attacks on things like water desalination plants or power plants in the Gulf, that is a massive escalation. Also, keep an eye out for U.S. ground forces getting into position near the Iranian coast, or if Iran starts firing more long-range missiles. Any of these would mean we are heading down a path toward a much wider and much more destructive war.
And this brings us right back to the central danger. This entire crisis is a high-wire act. It's a contest of coercion where both sides are pushing each other closer and closer to the edge. And the final question is the one that really matters most. In this incredibly dangerous game, who is going to miscalculate first?